Hello everyone. Welcome to Realist Quill. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? The hospital wasn't a place anyone would choose to spend their final days. But after 3 weeks of the unexplained fever, I didn't have much choice. The quarantine ward of St. Catherine's Medical Center became my prison. A sterile, fluorescent-lit box where I watched my skin turn ashen and my veins darken beneath the surface. The doctors called my condition aggressive septicemia of unknown origin. The nurses called me the miracle patient. I was neither dying nor recovering, just existing in a purgatory of persistent fever and strange symptoms that baffled everyone in infectious disease. But I knew what they didn't. I knew what was happening to me, and I knew it had already happened to others before me. It began with a camping trip in the Adirondacks, something my friends and I did every summer. 6 of us escaped the city for a weekend of hiking, fishing, and drinking around a campfire. This year, we ventured deeper into the mountains than ever before, seeking untouched wilderness. We found a perfect spot near a small lake, the water clear as glass, reflecting the dense pine forest surrounding it. On the second day, Jason discovered the cave, not a large one, just a narrow opening in the rocky hillside, about half a mile from our campsite. We all took turns shining our flashlights into its depths, seeing nothing but darkness. Of course, we had to explore it. What healthy, adventurous 30-somethings wouldn't? The cave extended about 50 feet into the mountain before opening into a chamber roughly the size of a studio apartment. Ancient stalactites hung from the ceiling like petrified icicles. Our voices echoed eerily as we admired nature's architecture. Then Megan spotted it, a dark recess in the back wall, barely visible in our flashlight beams. A passageway leading deep. Against my better judgment, I volunteered to check it out while the others waited in the main chamber. I had to crawl on hands and knees, the rough stones scraping my palms as I inched forward. The narrow tunnel abruptly opened into a second chamber, much smaller than the first. My flashlight beam reflected off something metallic in the far corner. Moving closer, I discovered a rusted metal box, roughly the size of a briefcase, with a faded biohazard symbol still visible on its surface. Military, scientific, I couldn't tell, but it didn't belong there, in this pristine natural environment. And curiosity got the better of me. The latch was corroded, but gave way with a little force. Inside were glass vials, most broken, secured in foam padding that had deteriorated with time. A laminated identification card showed a government agency logo I didn't recognize and a date. 19. One intact vial remained, containing a cloudy yellowish liquid. As I lifted it for a closer look, my finger slipped on the damp glass. The vial dropped, shattering against the stone floor. A tiny splash of the liquid hit my wrist, where I'd scraped it raw during the crawl-in. I wiped it away quickly, thinking nothing of it at the time. We emerged from the cave laughing, recounting our adventure, and I mentioned the strange box to the others. Tyler, always the conspiracy theorist, insisted we go back and collect it. Proof of some government experiment gone wrong, he said. But a sudden thunderstorm drove us back to camp instead, and by morning we'd all forgotten about it. 3 days after returning to the city, the fever began. By day 5, I was hospitalized. By week 2, I was transferred to quarantine, as my symptoms progressed beyond anything the doctors had seen before. And now, here I lay, watching my body transform. The fever never broke, but my mind remained sharp, too sharp. I experienced moments of heightened sensory awareness that were almost painful. Sounds became unbearably loud, then faded to nothing. Lights too bright, then all dim. My hunger grew insatiable, but hospital food tasted like ash in my mouth. Doc Marcus visited daily, accompanied by specialists, whose names I never bothered to remember. They took blood, tissue samples, CT scans, MRIs. When I asked what they were finding, the answers were always vague. Still analyzing inconclusive results. Unusual anomalies. By the start of the 4th week, my 5 friends were also hospitalized with similar symptoms, though we were kept separated. A sympathetic nurse named Ellie slipped me updates on their conditions. They were deteriorating faster than I was. Whatever had happened to me in that cave, I'd passed it to them during our remaining days camping. On day 27, I woke to find Dr. Marcus standing at the foot of my bed, accompanied by a man in a military uniform. "This is Colonel Harmon," Dr. Marcus said, his voice tight. "He has some questions about your camping trip." I told them everything: the cave, the box, the broken vial. The colonel's expression never changed, but when I finished, he nodded once to Dr. Marcus and left without speaking to me. That night, Ellie came to my room after her shift had officially ended. She closed the door behind her and approached my bed, keeping her distance as protocol required. "Your friends," she whispered, her eyes darting to the door. "Jason died an hour ago." My chest tightened. "How?" His heart just stopped. But before that, he was changing. "All of you are. Changing how?" I asked, though I already knew. I'd seen my own transformation in the mirror. The darkening veins, the pallid skin, the strange yellow rings forming around my iris. "Your cellular structure is deteriorating and rebuilding itself simultaneously," she said. "It's like nothing I've ever seen. Your internal organs are shutting down, but you're still alive. It doesn't make medical sense." "What about the others? Megan, Tyler, Annie, Kim?" "Critical condition. All of them." She hesitated. "But that's not why I'm here." I overheard the colonel on the phone. "They're moving you tonight. All of you to a military facility. They know what happened to you. This isn't the first time." Cold fear washed over me. "What do you mean, not the first time?" The colonel mentioned something called Contingency Protocol Lazarus. He said the containment procedures were established in night. She stepped closer, lowering her voice further. "That matches the date you found in the cave, doesn't it?" Before I could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the hospital. Ellie's pager buzzed at her hip. She checked it, her face draining of color. "It's the ICU," she said. "I have to go." After she left, I lay in the darkness listening to the chaos unfolding outside my room. Shouts, running footsteps, the squeak of gurney wheels on linoleum. The alarms continued for 20 minutes before abruptly cutting off, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. 2 hours passed before my door opened again. A nurse I didn't recognize entered, wearing full hazmat gear, rather than the standard isolation protocols they'd been using. Without speaking, she began disconnecting my monitors. "What's happening?" I asked. She didn't answer, just continued preparing me for transport. "Please, my friends, are they okay?" She paused, her face unreadable behind the plastic shield of her helmet. "They couldn't be resuscitated." "What do you mean? All of them?" "Sir, I'm not authorized to discuss this with you." "They're dead?" My voice cracked. "All 4 of them." She turned away, reaching for something in her cart. "You need to remain calm. I'm going to give you a mild sedative for the transfer." I grabbed her wrist, surprised by my own strength. "Tell me what's happening." She tried to pull away, but my grip tightened involuntarily. I heard a crack, felt bones shifting beneath my fingers. The nurse screamed, and I released her immediately, horrified by what I'd done. She stumbled backward, clutching her broken wrist, and fled the room. I heard her shouting for security in the hallway. I stared at my hand in disbelief. I wasn't particularly strong, a software developer who occasionally jogged, nothing more. Yet I just crushed a woman's wrist without effort. The door burst open, and 2 security guards entered, followed by Dr. Marcus and a team of nurses in hazmat suits. One guard aimed a taser at me while the other approached cautiously. "Mr. Reeves," Dr. Marcus said calmly, "I need you to cooperate. You're being transferred to a facility better equipped to treat your condition." "My friends are dead," I said flatly. What killed them? What's killing me? Dr. Marcus glanced at the guards. No one is dying. This is a precautionary. Don't lie to me, I shouted, surprised again by the force of my voice. It sounded different, deeper, resonant, almost vibrating the air between us. The lights in the room flickered. A look passed between Dr. Marcus and the guards. Fear, unmistakable fear. They knew something. What was in that cave? I demanded. What was in that vial? Sedate him, Dr. Marcus ordered. Now. The nurse approached with a syringe, but my body moved of its own accord. I rolled off the bed, tearing out my IV in the process. The guard with the taser fired, the electrodes striking my chest. I felt the current, a tickling sensation, nothing more, and pulled the wires out. Everyone in the room froze, staring at me in horror. I looked down at my hospital gown, now splattered with blood from the IV, but I felt no pain, only hunger. A deep, gnawing hunger, unlike anything I'd experienced before. Mr. Reeves, Dr. Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly. Please stay calm. You're having a psychotic episode due to your fever. We can help you. My friends, I said again. Tell me what happened to them. The second guard, seeing his colleague's taser, had no effect, drew his weapon, a standard issue 9mm handgun. Extreme for a hospital security guard, but perhaps not for whatever situation was unfolding. Put it down, Dr. Marcus snapped. For God's sake, we need him alive. But the guard was focused on me, his eyes wide with terror. I took a step forward, and he fired twice. I felt the impacts, one in my shoulder, one in my chest, but there was no pain, just a dull pressure. I looked down to see blood spreading across the thin fabric of my gown, but I remained standing. The room erupted into chaos. Dr. Marcus was shouting orders. Nurses were screaming. The guards were backing away, and through it all, I felt a strange clarity descend. My senses sharpened further. I could hear heartbeats, smell the adrenaline-soaked sweat, see the tiny dilations in their pupils, and I was hungry, so very hungry. What happened next comes to me in flashes, like scenes from a movie playing at double speed. The guard's neck beneath my teeth. The copper taste of blood. Screams fading to gurgles. More security arriving. More shots fired. Bodies falling. Me, still standing. Still feeding. Still hungry. I remember moving through the hospital corridors, instinct driving me toward the ICU, where my friends had died. I remember the looks on people's faces as I passed, not just fear, but recognition, as if they'd seen something like me before in movies or nightmares. The ICU was in lockdown, but doors couldn't stop me anymore. I tore through them, following some invisible thread pulling me forward. And there they were, my 5 friends, each on a gurney, sheets pulled over their faces. But I could hear something the doctors couldn't. Beneath the sheets, something was stirring. I pulled back the sheet covering Jason's face. His skin was gray, veins black and prominent. His eyes, once brown, had the same yellow rings as mine. As I watched, those eyes opened. He saw me, recognized me. His mouth opened, revealing teeth that had somehow sharpened. He tried to speak, produced only a groan. One by one I uncovered the others, all alive or something like it. All changed as I was changed, all hungry. I freed them from their restraints, and together we moved through the hospital. A feeding frenzy, a nightmare made flesh. Some primal part of me knew what we had become, though I couldn't bring myself to say the word even in my thoughts. By dawn, St. Catherine's Medical Center was a tomb. We emerged into the early morning light, expecting pain from the sun that didn't come. The city lay before us, unknowing, unprepared. I thought of the rusted box in the cave, the faded biohazard symbol, the date 1971. Some government experiment, Tyler had said. He wasn't wrong. What do we do now? Megan asked, her voice a rasp. her chin stained with blood. I looked at my friends, my fellow patients, 0, and felt the hunger rising again. But beneath it was something else. Purpose, direction, as if whatever had changed us was also guiding us. We spread, I said simply. And so we did, through the city, across the state, and beyond. The military response came too late. They knew what had been in that cave, knew and had tried to contain it. But some things can't be contained forever. Now 3 months later, I sit in an abandoned radio station, broadcasting this message to anyone still human enough to hear it. Not as a warning, it's far too late for that, but as an explanation. Patient 0 is a medical term for the first documented case of a disease. But the disease that's consuming humanity didn't start with me. It started in 1971, with whatever was being tested in those mountains. I was just the key that unlocked the door. If you're hearing this, you're probably hiding, probably scared, probably armed. But guns won't save you. Nothing will. The hunger always wins. And somewhere, in a mountain cave in the Adirondacks, a rusted metal box sits open, its last secret released into the world after decades of waiting. Patient 0 wasn't me. Patient 0 was whatever they created in 1971. We are its children. And we are always, always hungry. Day 1, 7:32 p.m. If you're receiving this transmission, I don't know whether to congratulate you or pity you. My name is Daniel Weiss. Until 2 weeks ago, I was just another radio producer at WKRS 104.9, the voice of Cedar Mill. Now, I'm probably the last broadcaster in a 100-mile radius, maybe the last person, period. This recording will continue automatically on a loop after I'm gone. Consider it a time capsule, a warning, a confession. It started with the rain. 3 straight days of it. Uncommon for our usually arid corner of Nevada. The meteorologist called it a atmospheric river event, one of those climate change phenomena that's supposed to happen once a century, not twice in a decade. The desert soil couldn't absorb it. The town's outdated drainage system couldn't channel it. Cedar Mill was effectively cut off when the highway flooded. The single bridge connecting us to the interstate collapsed, and cell towers went down in the mudslides. Not that any of us were particularly concerned at first. Cedar Mill has always prided itself on self-sufficiency, a holdover from its mining days. The town council activated emergency protocols. The high school gymnasium became a shelter. The local market rationed supplies. Basic disaster response. We'd ride it out, like we had during the wildfires 3 years ago. On the 4th day, when the rain finally stopped, the first reports came in about the Parker family. Their farm was just outside town, along the creek that had swollen to 10 times its normal size. Search and rescue found their house still standing, but waterlogged. All 4 family members were inside. All 4 were dead, but not from drowning. Sheriff Mills called the station that evening, asking me to hold off on reporting details. Just say we're investigating unusual circumstances, he told me. No need to start a panic. I should have pressed him, should have asked what unusual circumstances meant, why their bodies had been quarantined, why the coroner had called in specialists from the university in Las Vegas. But I didn't. I followed instructions, reading the sanitized statement on air, then transitioning to updates about road clearing efforts and emergency supply deliveries. By day 6, there were more bodies. The Parkers' nearest neighbors, the Hollands, the Greenwoods, the elderly Chen couple, all found in their homes, all displaying the same unusual circumstances. I cornered Deputy Rodriguez at the diner when he came in for coffee. Pete and I went to high school together. We weren't friends exactly, but there was enough history between us that I thought he might talk. It's above my pay grade, Dan, he said, glancing around nervously. County health department's involved now. CDC too, I think. CDCC, that got my attention. We're talking infectious disease. He shrugged, but his eyes gave him away. I'm not supposed to say anything. Pete, come on. People deserve to know if there's something spreading. He leaned closer across the table. They had bites. All of them. Human bites. What, like someone attacked them? No. He shook his head, like they attacked each other, tore each other apart. The Parkers, he stopped, swallowing hard. They found Mrs. Parker with pieces of her husband's arm in her stomach, partially digested. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. That's not possible, I finally said. People don't eat people. Yeah, well, tell that to the Parker family. He stood up, coffee forgotten. Look, forget I said anything. Official word is still unusual circumstances pending investigation. That night, I broke protocol and used my emergency key to access the station's satellite backup system. The main internet was still down, but we had limited satellite capability for emergencies. What I found was scattered but terrifying. Similar incidents had occurred in 3 other towns across the Southwest, all after heavy rain events, all quarantined, all communications cut. The official statements were identical to what we'd been told: unusual circumstances and ongoing investigation. But I found a medical examiner's preliminary report from a town in Arizona that had been accidentally published, then quickly retracted. It described aggressive posthumous parasitic behavior, indicative of cordyceps-like neural hijacking. In simpler terms, something was taking over dead bodies and making them hungry. I was still processing this when the station door burst open. Sheriff Mills stood there, flanked by 2 figures in hazmat suits. "Shut it down, Dan," he said, gesturing to my computer. "Now, people have a right to know what's happening." I argued even as one of the hazmat figures disconnected my terminal. "No, what they have is a right to not start a goddamn panic," Mills snapped. "We've got this contained. The CDC team will be here by morning with treatment protocols." "Treatment for what? Posthumous parasitic behavior? These people are dead, Jim." His face changed then, something like fear flashing across it. "Who told you that terminology? Does it matter? It's happening, isn't it? Some kind of infection taking over corpses." The sheriff exchanged glances with the hazmat team. One of them stepped forward. "Mr. Weiss, I'm Dr. Patel from the Centers for Disease Control. What you've described is partially accurate but dangerously simplified. We're dealing with a previously unknown pathogen that affects neural tissue. It can present with symptoms resembling death, but the patients are not, technically speaking, deceased. They're eating each other," I said flatly. "There are aggressive tendencies, yes, which is precisely why public knowledge would be catastrophic at this juncture. Panic would only spread the contagion faster." "So it is contagious, person to person?" Dr. Patel hesitated. "We believe the initial vector was waterborne, carried in the floodwaters. But yes, once manifested, it can transmit through bodily fluids, primarily saliva, through bites." The implications hit me like a physical blow. "You're talking about zombies, actual zombies." "That terminology is unhelpful and sensationalist," she replied stiffly. "These are living human beings with a severe neurological infection that makes them eat other people." Sheriff Mills stepped between us. "Enough, Dan. You're to stay off the air until we give the all clear." "That's an order. We'll make periodic announcements about the containment situation, but that's it. No speculation, no details about symptoms. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without shouting. "Good," Mills continued. "The National Guard is setting up a secure perimeter around town. Medical teams arrive tomorrow. We'll have this under control within 48 hours. As they left, Dr. Patel turned back. "Mr. Weiss, please understand. Panic is as dangerous as the pathogen itself right now. Help us keep people calm, and we can minimize casualties." I waited until they were gone before returning to the satellite system. This time, I wasn't looking for medical reports. I was looking for military deployment. What I found confirmed my worst fears. The secure perimeter wasn't to keep infected people in. It was to ensure nothing got out. Cedar Mill wasn't being quarantined. It was being written off. Day 3, 10:47 a.m. I've been broadcasting emergency instructions for 2 days straight, sleeping on the couch in the break room between updates. The official story is still localized epidemic, shelter in place, but fewer people are buying it with each passing hour. The National Guard never came. Neither did the CDC reinforcements Dr. Patel had promised. Last night, The sheriff's department stopped responding to calls altogether. The first attack in town happened at the high school shelter. No one's sure how it started. Maybe someone died naturally and turned. Maybe an infected person from one of the outlying farms made it there. But by morning, the gymnasium was a slaughterhouse. The few survivors described scenes too horrific to repeat on air. I've been telling people to barricade themselves in their homes, use boards, furniture, anything to secure doors and windows, conserve food and water, stay quiet, don't open doors for anyone showing unusual behavior or injuries. Some haven't listened. A group of about 30 decided to try breaking through the military blockade at the highway. They didn't understand there is no blockade, no soldiers, just a ring of automated weapon systems, programmed to fire on anything moving out of the containment zone. I heard the gunfire from here. It went on for a long time. Dr. Patel checked in by satellite phone this morning, her voice tight with stress. She's holed up in the clinic with the remaining medical staff and some patients. They've barricaded the doors, but supplies are running low. She confirmed what I'd pieced together. Cedar Mill has been designated a loss. Containment is the only priority now. How long? I asked her. The silence stretched so long. I thought we'd lost the connection. Protocol is 30 days, she finally said. If no signs of active infection after that period, they'll send in assessment teams. And if there are still infected...
Another pause.
Aerial sterilization. She didn't need to elaborate. Day 5, 3:22 p.m. The power grid failed last night. The station's on emergency generators now. I've got maybe 3 days of fuel left. The infected. I've stopped dancing around the word zombies in my broadcasts. Have started congregating in larger groups. They're not mindless. Not entirely. They seem to retain some basic problem-solving abilities. Yesterday, a group of them used a dumpster to smash through the front of the market. They didn't want the food. They wanted the people hiding inside. I watched it happen from the station's roof. Couldn't do anything but document it. I've been keeping detailed records of their behavior. How they move mostly at night. How they seem to communicate through grunts and screams. How they can run, not shamble or lurch, like in the movies, but full-out sprint when they sense prey. Patel stopped responding yesterday. I have to assume the clinic has fallen. My satellite connection is deteriorating. Before it went completely, I managed to upload some of my notes and audio recordings to a secure server outside the containment zone. Maybe someone will find them useful. Maybe someone will learn how to fight this thing if it ever escapes. Because it will try to escape. I'm certain of that now. This isn't just a disease. It's too organized, too purposeful. The way the infected hunt in packs. The way they've started testing defenses around secured buildings. It's as if they're being directed. Day 7, 11:05 p.m. I think I'm the last one. Haven't heard another human voice on any frequency for 36 hours. The infected have surrounded the station. I can hear them outside, scratching at the walls, testing the doors. They know I'm here. They can probably smell me. The windows are boarded up, doors barricaded with filing cabinets and desks. It won't hold them forever, but it doesn't need to. I've only got about half a day's worth of generator fuel left anyway. I've been broadcasting continuously, hoping someone outside the containment zone might pick up the signal, sharing everything I know about the infected, how to identify them, how they behave, how to fight them if you must, destroy the brain stem, sever the spinal column, or complete immolation. Nothing else stops them. But there's something else. Something I haven't shared until now. 3 days ago, I saw her. Sarah, my wife. Sarah, who died in the Cedar Mill Regional Hospital 2 months ago. After a long battle with cancer. Sarah, whose body I watched being lowered into the ground at Oakwood Cemetery. Sarah, who stood in the parking lot below the station, staring up at the building with cloudy, yellowed eyes, her burial dress torn and stained with mud. I thought I was hallucinating at first. Grief and exhaustion playing tricks on my mind. But she was there. And she wasn't alone. All around her were others I recognized. Mr. Abernathy, my high school English teacher, who passed away last winter. Old Mrs. Delgado, from the apartment next to mine, who died in her sleep just before Christmas. The Mercer twins, victims of a car accident 3 years ago. The dead of Cedar Mill were walking again. Not just the recently deceased victims of the outbreak, but those long buried. I understand now why the military was so quick to contain us. Why there was never any real plan for rescue or treatment. This isn't just a pathogen. It's something older, something worse. The rain didn't bring disease. It awakened something that was always here, dormant in the soil of Cedar Mill. In the old mining days, before the town even existed, there was an incident. It's mentioned briefly in the county historical archives. A cave-in at the original silver mine in 1887. 43 miners trapped. Rescue attempts abandoned after 2 weeks, when rescuers reported unnatural sounds and abominable behavior from within the collapsed tunnels. The mine was sealed. A new shaft opened half a mile away. Life continued. The incident was forgotten, or deliberately buried in history, until the rain, until the floodwaters percolated through layers of rock and soil that had remained dry for over a century, reaching the sealed mine and whatever remained inside it. Day 8, 4:19 a.m. They've breached the first floor. I can hear them moving around downstairs, overturning furniture, smashing equipment, searching, hunting. The station's built like a fortress. Owner was paranoid about government raids during the Cold War. So I've still got the second floor and roof access. But the generator's down there. Once they find it, once they destroy it, or the fuel runs out, this broadcast ends. I've set up the recording to loop automatically as long as power remains. If you're hearing this, it means I'm already gone. Either I've escaped somehow, or more likely, I've joined the ranks of the infected. There's something else you should know. Something I've observed about the infected that makes them more dangerous than simple walking corpses. They remember not everything, not consistently, but flashes of who they were. Enough to give them access to skills and knowledge from their living days. I've seen infected police officers still capable of using firearms. An infected mechanic who dismantled a generator to use its parts as weapons. They're operating on predatory instinct. Yes, but guided by human intelligence, or the fragments of it that remain in their damaged brains. And they're evolving. Each day, they become more coordinated, more strategic. The longer someone's been infected, the more control they seem to have over their actions. The recently turned are frenzied, all hunger and impulse. The older ones watch, plan, direct. They're coming up the stairs now. I don't have much time left. If you're in a safe zone, stay there. If this has spread beyond Cedar Mill, God help us all. But remember what I've told you. They're not mindless. They remember, and that makes them infinitely more dangerous than any zombie you've seen in movies. One last thing. If you encounter an infected person you once knew, someone you loved, don't hesitate. That moment of recognition, that second of doubt, will be your last. What looks back at you through their eyes isn't your loved one anymore. It's something else. Something ancient and hungry, wearing their face. They're at the door. I can see shadows moving under it. I'm going to try for the roof, though I don't expect to make it. Remember Cedar Mill. Remember what happened here. And if the rain falls too long in your town, if people start acting strangely, if the dead don't stay dead, run. Just run. Day 12, time unknown. This is Daniel Weiss, I think. It's hard to remember. I'm not sure why I'm still broadcasting. Habit, maybe. Some fragment of who I was, still functioning on autopilot. They caught me on the roof. I fought, lost. One of them bit my shoulder, tore through the muscle like it was paper. The pain was extraordinary. Then came the fever, the seizures, the hunger. God, the hunger. It never stops, never satisfies. I ate 2 of them before I realized what I was doing. They didn't fight back, seemed to understand it was necessary for the change to complete. I'm different now. We all are. Not dead, not alive, something else. There's a presence in my mind, a collective consciousness guiding us. The original miners, I think. What they became down in that darkness, waiting for over a century. Patient, evolving, spreading. The containment won't hold. We're finding ways through, under, around. The hunger drives us, but the hive mind directs us. We work together in ways the living never could. Perfect coordination, perfect purpose. I can feel myself fading, the Daniel that was becoming less distinct with each hour. Soon I'll just be another part of the greater whole. If anyone is receiving this, it's already too late. We're coming. We remember how the world works. And we're so very, very hungry. I used to think the ocean was the safest place to be when the world ended. 3 years working maritime security on cruise liners had taught me that. Isolation is protection. Distance is safety. When the first reports came in about the outbreak, I was thankful to be 40 nautical miles from the nearest shore, watching Miami's skyline recede on the horizon as the Oceanic Dream embarked on its 7-day Caribbean circuit. My name is Marcus Torres. I was Chief Security Officer on what would become known as the Plague Ship, the floating morgue, or most commonly, Patient Vessel Zero. The Oceanic Dream never completed its journey. None of us were ever supposed to return to shore. Some of us did anyway. It began, as these things often do, with something small. Innocuous. A passenger collapsed during the welcome dinner in the main dining hall. Heart attack. The ship's doctor initially thought. The man Gregory Whalen, 67, retired accountant from Ohio, was rushed to the medical bay. Standard procedure. Nothing alarming. Then the reports started flooding the news channels. First Miami, then Atlanta, Charlotte, Washington, D.C. Entire cities implementing emergency protocols. The vague term biological incident, repeated by increasingly panicked news anchors. The captain called an emergency meeting of senior staff at midnight. The mainland's gone dark, he told us, his weathered face grave in the fluorescent light of the conference room. CDC has issued a no-dock order for all vessels. We're to maintain our position in international waters until further notice. Huang, our communications officer, spoke up. Sir, my contacts at Miami Port Authority went offline mid-conversation. Last thing they said was to prevent any passengers from disembarking under any circumstances, regardless of medical emergency. The ship's doctor cleared his throat. About that, Captain, Mr. Whalen died 20 minutes ago. A pause heavy with unspoken concern. Cause? The captain asked. Officially, cardiac arrest. But the doctor hesitated. There were complications, symptoms I've never seen before. Extremely aggressive septicemia, tissue necrosis that progressed more rapidly than should be medically possible. The captain frowned. Are we talking about the same thing that's happening on shore? I don't know, the doctor admitted. Information from CDC is fragmented, but I've isolated the body and ordered my staff to use maximum infectious disease protocols. Keep this quiet, the captain decided. Last thing we need is panic among the passengers. As far as anyone knows, we're continuing our scheduled cruise until authorities give us clearance to return. If only we'd known then what was already incubating throughout the ship. By morning, Whalen's wife had collapsed with similar symptoms. By noon, one of the nurses who'd treated him was in isolation. By dinner, 6 more passengers had reported to medical with high fevers and disorientation. I stationed security personnel outside the rapidly filling medical bay. No one in or out without proper protection, I ordered. And keep it discreet. We don't want to alarm the other passengers. Too late. Rumors spread faster than viruses on a cruise ship. Despite the crew's best efforts to maintain normal operations, the poolside activities, the evening entertainment, the endless buffets, people noticed the growing number of security personnel, The crew members in surgical masks, the quarantine designations appearing on entire sections of deck. On the third day, Mr. Whalen's body disappeared from the morgue. "What do you mean disappeared?" I demanded when the doctor called me at 3 a.m. "Exactly what I said," he snapped, exhaustion evident in his voice. "The orderly went to prepare the body for cold storage, and it wasn't there." "Bodies don't just walk away," I said, instantly regretting my choice of words as ice formed in my stomach. But that's exactly what had happened. We found the night orderly in a storage closet, his throat torn open, body already cooling. The trail of blood led to an air duct forced open from the inside. "Lock down the medical bay," I ordered my team. "Full sweep of all decks. Whatever did this can't have gone far." I was wrong. By the time we organized search teams, screams were already echoing from the lower passenger decks. What emerged from that air duct wasn't Gregory Whalen, retired accountant from Ohio. It was something wearing his skin, something that remembered enough of its former existence to hunt effectively through the ship's corridors, but not enough to resist the hunger driving it forward. The first attacks caught everyone off guard. Passengers woken from sleep by what they thought was a deranged, blood-covered man breaking into their cabins. By the time my security team reached the affected areas, we had 11 dead passengers and 7 more bitten or wounded. I'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan before my maritime security career. I'd seen combat, seen explosions tear people apart, seen wounds that no human should survive. Nothing prepared me for watching those bite victims transform. The progression was horrifyingly fast. Fever within minutes, delirium within an hour, death or something like it within 3, and then they would rise again. Eyes clouded but movements deliberate, driven by one overwhelming impulse: feed. "We have to warn the mainland," I told the captain, as we barricaded ourselves in the bridge. "Whatever this is, it's worse than they're saying on the news." The captain, a 30-year veteran of commercial sailing, looked older than his 60 years as he shook his head. "I've been trying. All channels are emergency broadcast only now, and the message is always the same. Maintain position in international waters. No rescue forthcoming." "They're abandoning us," I realized. 3,000 passengers and crew. "They're containing us," he corrected grimly. "We're a floating quarantine zone." Outside the reinforced doors of the bridge, we could hear the occasional scream, the sound of running feet, the distant echo of gunshots as some of my security team made their last stand. I'd ordered them to protect the engine room and communication center, to maintain our essential systems for as long as possible. They were buying us time, but for what? "We need a plan," I said. "Some way to secure sections of the ship, gather survivors, establish safe zone." The captain studied the ship's schematics, spread across his console. "The crew quarters on Deck A have secure access. Cafeteria nearby for food supplies. If we can reach the armory, get your remaining security personnel properly equipped." Our planning was interrupted by a crackling transmission over the emergency channel. "Oceanic Dream. This is U.S. Navy destroyer, USS Halsey. We are approaching your position. Do not repeat. Do not attempt to dock or send boats. We are under orders to enforce quarantine by any means necessary." The captain grabbed the radio. "USS Halsey. This is Captain Warren of the Oceanic Dream. We have approximately 3,000 souls on board. Request immediate medical evacuation for uninfected passengers and crew." A pause. Then negative. "Oceanic Dream. Quarantine is absolute. No personnel transfer authorized. They're going to let us die out here," the captain said hollowly after the transmission ended. I stared at the radar screen, showing the destroyer's approach. "No," I said slowly. "They're making sure we die out here." The implications sank in. We weren't being quarantined in hopes of eventual rescue. We were being contained until the problem solved itself, until everyone on board was either dead or infected with no chance of reaching shore. "We need to abandon ship," I decided, Get as many uninfected people as possible into lifeboats before that destroyer gets in firing range. The captain's eyes widened. They'll fire on civilian lifeboats? You really want to test that theory? This isn't a rescue mission, Captain. It's an elimination operation. For the next hour, we worked frantically to coordinate an evacuation over the ship's PA system. I directed uninfected passengers and crew to muster stations, while engineering teams welded shut corridors where the infected were concentrated. My remaining security personnel, armed with makeshift weapons, fire axes, kitchen knives, broken furniture, fought desperate holding actions to keep evacuation routes clear. The scene at the lifeboat stations was chaos. Panicked passengers fighting for space, crew members trying to maintain order, infected breaking through our barricades and attacking the crowds. I stood at the davits, pistol in hand, making impossible choices about who could board and who was showing early symptoms. "Security Chief," a voice called from behind me. I turned to see Huang, our communications officer, running toward me. "We've intercepted Navy transmissions. They're preparing to fire on the ship." "How long?" "Minutes. They're moving into position now." I made a decision then, one that still haunts me. "Launch the boats," I ordered. "All of them. Scatter in different directions." But the Navy won't be able to track all of them. Some might make it to shore. I surveyed the remaining crowd of terrified passengers. Anyone not on a boat, get below waterline. Engine room, cargo holds. If they torpedo us, those areas might survive. As the lifeboats dropped into the dark water, I caught my first glimpse of the destroyer, its silhouette backlit by the rising sun. We'd run out of time. The first explosion tore through the ship's stern, rocking the entire vessel. Not a torpedo, a guided missile, precision targeted at our propulsion systems. They weren't trying to sink us immediately. They were ensuring we couldn't move. I never made it to a lifeboat. The second missile hit closer to the muster stations, sending me flying across the deck. When I regained consciousness, the evacuation area was in flames, the remaining lifeboats destroyed or dangling useless from twisted davits. Around me, the infected moved through the smoke, some of them still burning, undeterred by the flames consuming their flesh. I dragged myself to a service door, slipped inside and began the long crawl through the ship's innards, toward the one place I thought might still be safe. The sealed crew quarters on deck. For 3 days, 37 of us survived in that fortified section of the ship. Crew members, security personnel, and passengers who'd made it to safety before we sealed the doors. We could hear the infected outside, their relentless scratching and pounding at the barrier. The ship listed heavily after the missile strikes, making movement difficult. Power failed intermittently. We rationed the food and water we'd managed to secure, knowing it wouldn't last long. And still the Navy destroyer circled, ensuring nothing left the ship. They fired on 2 lifeboats that had launched during the chaos. I watched through a porthole as the small crafts were reduced to burning debris. No survivors, no witnesses. On the 4th day, the infected breached our sanctuary. It was just one at first, a steward named Miguel, who had hidden his bite during the initial screening. By the time we realized what was happening, he'd already attacked 3 others in their sleep. The confined space worked against us. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Within hours, our safe zone became a slaughterhouse. I barricaded myself and 5 others in a storage locker, while the screams of our former compatriots echoed through the ventilation system. We had 1 pistol with 4 bullets remaining, a fire axe and dwindling hope. "We can't stay here," said Rebecca, a kindergarten teacher from Minnesota, who'd shown surprising resilience throughout the ordeal. "They'll find us eventually." "We need to reach the communications center," agreed Jameson, one of my security officers. "Send an SOS. Let the world know what's happening." "The world already knows," I said bitterly. "Why do you think that destroyer is out there? This isn't a containment, it's a cover-up." "Then we go overboard," suggested Lee, an engineering officer. "Swim for it," In these water, with that ship watching, I shook my head. We'd never make it. So we just die here, Rebecca challenged, hiding in a closet until those things break through or we starve. She was right, of course. Inaction was just a slower death sentence. There's another option, Lee said quietly. The emergency submersible. We all turned to look at him. What submersible? I demanded. Prototype safety equipment, he explained. Installed on 6 ships in the fleet as a test program. Small, 2-person escape pod, designed to descend to a safe depth in case of catastrophic ship failure, then surface a safe distance away. It's in a sealed compartment near the keel. Why am I just hearing about this now? I asked. Lee looked uncomfortable. It's not officially operational. Still in testing phase, and it's only designed for crew evacuation in extreme circumstances. I'd say these qualify as extreme circumstances, Rebecca said dryly. Hope flickered, however, faintly. Can you get it working? Lee nodded. If we can reach it. If the compartment wasn't damaged in the attack. 2 people, Jameson noted grimly. There are 6 of us. A heavy silence fell over our group. We draw straws, Rebecca finally said. Fair chance for everyone. No, I countered. Lee has to go. He's the only one who can operate it. And I looked around the group, making a calculation I never wanted to make. Rebecca should take the second spot. Why me? She asked, surprised. Because you're young, healthy, and the world needs to know exactly what happened here. From someone they'll believe. A kindergarten teacher is more credible than a security officer they can dismiss as disgruntled or delusional. No one argued, though I could see the resignation in their eye. 4 of us would stay behind to create a distraction, to clear a path. 2 would carry the truth to shore if they made it. What followed was the most desperate journey of my life. 6 survivors navigating a labyrinth of corridors and service tunnels, descending through a cruise ship that had become a floating tomb. The infected roamed everywhere. Passengers in evening wear, crew members in uniform, all transformed into something primal and relentless. We lost Diaz in the grand atrium, pulled into a crowd of the infected when a rotted balcony railing gave way beneath him. Chen sacrificed himself at a choke point, holding back a dozen infected with nothing but a fire axe as the rest of us escaped through a maintenance shack. Miller took a bite to the forearm 2 decks above our destination. I put a bullet in his brain before the transformation could begin. By the time we reached the submersible bay, only I remained to ensure Lee and Rebecca's escape. The small, egg-shaped craft sat in its cradle, miraculously undamaged. Lee worked frantically to prepare it for launch, while I stood guard at the only entrance to the chamber. It's ready, he finally called. But there's a problem. The launch mechanism needs to be activated manually. Someone has to stay behind to release the docking clamps. Of course, nothing could be simple, not even at the end. I'll do it, I said, not turning from my position at the door. Just tell me what switches to flip. Marcus, Rebecca began, her voice breaking. Don't, I cut her off. Just promise me you'll tell the truth. All of it. What was on this ship? What the government did to contain it? The people who died here deserve that much. She nodded, tears streaking through the grime on her face. I promise. Lee explained the launch sequence as he and Rebecca sealed themselves into the small craft. I could hear the infected getting closer, drawn by our voices or movement, or whatever primal sense guided them to the living. When I give the signal, I told them through the submersible's communication system, I'll activate the launch sequence, then open the exterior hatch. The force of the water rushing in will clear your path out, but it will flood this entire section instantly. You won't survive that, Lee said unnecessarily. I was never getting off this ship, I replied. We all knew that. The infected reached the door, their inhuman sounds echoing through the metal. The barricade wouldn't hold long. Get ready, I said, moving to the control panel. And Rebecca, make it count. I activated the launch sequence, watched the indicator lights turn green one by one. As the barricade began to give way, I hit the exterior hatch release. The rush of water was immediate and violent, slamming me against the far wall even as it swept the infected away like rag dolls. The submersible shot through the opening, propelled by its own engines and the powerful current. The water rose quickly, freezing and black. As it reached my chest, my neck, I had one final thought. At least I wouldn't become one of them. At least the sea would claim me first. Then darkness. I didn't expect to wake up. When consciousness returned, I found myself washed up on a lower deck that had partially flooded, the water having carried me through a maze of corridors before receding. Somehow I'd survived, but for what? I was still trapped on a dead ship surrounded by the infected, with a Navy destroyer ensuring nothing escaped. The submersible was gone. Whether it had made it past the Navy's perimeter, I couldn't know. All I could do was hope that Rebecca and Lee would fulfill their promise to tell the world what had happened here. For 17 days, I survived in the flooded bowels of the Oceanic Dream. I lived on emergency rations scavenged from storage lockers, drank condensation collected from pipes, and navigated the ship only when absolutely necessary. The infected still roamed, though their movements had slowed, their bodies deteriorating without fresh prey. On the 18th day, the destroyer left its position. I watched through a porthole as it moved away, maintaining radio silence. Hours later, I understood why. 3 military helicopters approached, hovering over the main deck. Men in hazmat suits descended on ropes, carrying equipment. Not a rescue mission, a research team. I observed from hiding as they collected samples from the infected, documented the progression of the condition, and downloaded data from the ship's medical computers. They were studying the outbreak, learning from it. But for what purpose? One thing became immediately clear. They weren't checking for survivors. They moved through the ship with biological collection equipment, not life detection gear. As far as they were concerned, everyone aboard was already dead or infected. On their 3rd day, I made contact, not with the research team. I didn't trust their intentions, but with a young soldier who had been left to guard their helicopter on the top deck. I approached cautiously, hands raised. "Don't shoot," I called out. "I'm uninfected." Chief Security Officer Marcus Torres, his weapon snapped up, then wavered as he processed my appearance. Human, speaking coherently, not attempting to attack. "That's impossible," he said. "This ship was declared a total loss 3 weeks ago. No survivors. And yet here I stand," I replied. "Which raises the question of why your people are so interested in a ship full of nothing but walking corpses." Indecision played across his features. He'd been told one thing but was seeing another with his own eyes. "Lower your weapon, son," I said gently. "I just want to get off this floating hell." Whether it was compassion or curiosity, he made his choice. "The research team leaves in 2 hours. Stay hidden until then. I'll create a distraction during extraction. Give you a window to board." True to his word, when the time came, he accidentally discharged his weapon, drawing the attention of his comrades, while I slipped aboard the helicopter and concealed myself under equipment tarps. The gamble was enormous. If discovered, I'd likely be thrown overboard mid-flight. But after nearly 3 weeks on the ship of the dead, any risk seemed acceptable. We landed at a military installation I later identified as a repurposed oil platform, 60 miles offshore. In the confusion of unloading, I managed to slip away, making my way to a supply area where smaller boats were docked. I stole a rigid inflatable with a full tank of gas, and navigated by stars toward what I hoped was the Florida coastline. I reached shore near Key Largo just before dawn, abandoned the boat, and disappeared into the mangroves before search helicopters appeared on the horizon. They were looking for me, the one loose end from the Oceanic Dream. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've been moving constantly, using cash only, staying off the grid. I've searched desperately for any sign of Rebecca or Lai, any indication their submersible made it to shore, any hint of their story reaching the public. Nothing. Instead, the official story solidified. The Oceanic Dream suffered catastrophic engine failure resulting in fires and explosions. All hands lost. Tragic accident. Case closed. But I know the truth. I know what was on that ship wasn't just a disease. It was a weapon. The research team's methodical documentation, their lack of surprise at what they found, the military's immediate and overwhelming response. This wasn't their first encounter with the infected. I've gathered evidence, connected with others who've witnessed similar outbreaks. Always small, always ruthlessly contained, always erased from public record. Mysterious training accidents near research facility. Gas leaks, requiring evacuation of small towns that are later demolished for environmental remediation. A pattern emerges for those willing to see it. They're perfecting it, whatever it is, learning its limitations, its transmission vectors, its behavior pattern, creating the perfect weapon, one that requires no bombs, no bullets, just a patient zero introduced to a population. I'm writing this now because they're close. I can feel it. 3 days ago, my last contact, a nurse who had witnessed a similar outbreak at a research hospital in Oregon, stopped responding to our pre-arranged signals. Yesterday, I spotted men in unmarked vehicles watching my motel. If you're reading this, I'm already gone, either running again, or caught, or worse perhaps they've decided to use me as their next test subject, infected with the very thing I escaped. Poetic justice in their eyes, I'm sure. Remember the Oceanic Dream. Remember that when the reports come of isolated outbreaks, of cities quarantined, of containment protocols implemented for your safety. It's already too late. What happened on that ship was just a rehearsal. The dead walk, the government watch, and the world remains blind to the approaching storm. But now you know, and knowledge, however terrifying, is the only vaccine we have against what's coming.